Hello, boys and girls. Today for Skills Unit 6, we are doing Lesson 7. In this lesson, will be all about reading and grammar. Let's go ahead and get started. Our primary focus slide says that we will be listening today to a read aloud from America in 1812, Part 2. We will answer literal and inferential questions about key details in the text. You will also be learning that an adverb is a word that describes a verb. Let's go ahead and get started. Our first picture shows 3 people. Who might those 3 people be? What do you think? They are some of the founding fathers, right? We have George Washington, we have John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, okay? This is our first image that we are going to listen to a read aloud with. After the Revolutionary War, each of the first 3 presidents of the United States wanted the United States and Great Britain to be friends again. Even before the Napoleonic Wars began, George Washington had tried to establish a peaceful relationship with the British. Under his leadership, the United States and Great Britain signed a treaty called Jay's Treaty. In this treaty, the British promised not to get involved or interfere with the United States business or activities. Next, we have a map of shipping trade routes. We have all seen this before. During this time, one of the most common ways for 2 countries to maintain a good relationship was to trade with each other. The United States sent flour and tobacco and other goods to Great Britain. Great Britain sent tea and manufactured goods to America. When the Napoleonic Wars began in Europe, France and Great Britain became enemies. The United States was caught in the middle. The U.S. government really did not want to get involved. Merchants in New England relied on trade with Britain to run their businesses. France had helped America during the Revolutionary War. The United States wanted to keep that friendship as well. However, when U.S. ships, cargo, and sailors were being threatened, especially by the British, the United States could not ignore that. Okay? Why do you think the United States wanted to have good relations with Britain and France? Well, remember, we were a young nation. We were new, okay? And we had a small army and navy, and we didn't want to go to war. So we wanted to be friends with everybody. We also wanted to trade with both Britain and France. We wanted no issues. Okay, let's look at our next picture. This is a map of the United States, Canada, and New Spain with flags. You might think that what was happening at sea was enough to drive the United States to war with Great Britain, right? But there were even more problems on American land. Even though Britain had lost the 13 colonies to America, it still had control of land in northern Great Lakes region and the Northwestern Territories. Britain also controlled part of what is now Canada. Okay, the British had forts and they had outposts along the U.S. and Canadian border. Our next picture, these are settlers in wagons. Okay, most Americans during this time were farmers. Many settlers were moving west in search of land to farm. Although the wagons were on American land, the U.S. government began to suspect that the British were interfering with Americans who were settling in the Northern Territories, especially in Ohio River Valley and the Indiana Territory. They also believed that Britain was using its outposts in Canada to help Native Americans who were fighting to defend their land from the settlers. So think about this. In 1812, what job did most Americans have? What do you think? In 1812, most Americans were farmers. So if you said farmers, give yourselves a pat on the back. All right, our next picture, in 1811, many Native Americans fought to remove settlers from their land. Okay, this was the Battle of Tippecanoe. The U.S. Army fought back. The American soldiers had reason to believe that Native Americans received weapons from the British. The British absolutely denied it. They were like, no way, we didn't give them weapons. They insisted that they were only trading with Native Americans and nothing more. What do you think? Do you think they were doing more? What did the U.S. government suspect Britain of doing? We thought that the British were arming the Native Americans. Okay, giving them weapons to fight. Why do you think that Native Americans did not want settlers on their land? Because Native Americans feared the settlers would take their land away from them. Nobody wants that, right? Land is good. They use it for farming and living. All right, let's move on to our next slide, which is a question. Why do you think Native Americans and frontier settlers were in conflict with each other? Now I want you to think about Native Americans and how they felt as they saw more and more settlers moving onto their land. Probably didn't feel too good, right? They wanted to fight for their land. All right, let's go on to our next slide. Our adverb slide. Okay, remember an adverb? I said it in the beginning. It is another verb that describes a verb. It sounds really silly. Let's look at some of our examples. We have elegantly. That is describing a verb, right? Happily. Gently, like gently holding this bird. Hungrily, lazily, loudly. Let's look at some of our examples. Number 1, Dad drove slowly. What is the verb in that sentence? Yeah, drove, right? Drove is our verb. And what is describing that verb? Slowly. Good. Okay, next. Number 2, snow melts fast. What is the verb? Yes, melts. Okay, and what is the describing word? What is the adverb? If you said fast, you are correct. Okay, number 3, Susan danced lightly. What is the verb? Danced. Good. What is the describing word? What describes that verb? Lightly. Good. Number 4, daisies bloom brightly. What is the verb? If you said bloom, you are correct. What is the adverb? Brightly. Good. Number 5, Matt slept well. What is the verb? Slept is the verb. What is the adverb? Well. Very good. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. We are going to apply our knowledge now about verbs and adverbs. On activity page 7.1, you are going to read each sentence and put a wiggly line under the verb and a triangle around each adverb. Then draw an arrow from the adverb to the verb it describes. Okay, so first let's start off with finding our verb in number 1. Jane swims fast. What is the verb? It is swims. So you draw a wiggly line under swims. Now what is the adverb? What is describing swims? If you said fast, you are correct. So you draw a triangle around fast. And now we want to draw our arrow from the adverb to the verb. Remember, your adverb is fast. You have the triangle drawn around it. So you draw your arrow from fast to swims, like a little swoop arrow. Okay? You are going to complete this page. You can pause this video now or do it at the end. Oops. Actually, that is it for today, boys and girls. This is your last page for the lesson today. You do have your spelling words to study.